Hey, administrators, how we doing out there? Hopefully, everybody had a good and safe Christmas and New Year's Eve. I want to thank those lodges that did the proper dispensations and signed and got the affidavit signed for the New Year's Eve if they were open to the public. I appreciate that. Doing those steps are always very important for the lodge to be covered for a couple different reasons. Uh, I know some people had asked, well, we hadn't done that before, didn't realize they did it. Ever since I was an administrator for New Year's Eve, the General Governor's Office, now the Chief Compliance Office, has always asked for that on New Year's Eve. The dispensation also is very important also because if you're open to the public and raising money from the public, you need to be covered properly. And, that keeps you from paying taxes because you're raising money for an organization. And that may have been a community or Moose Charities. It could have been the lodge. The lodge is allowed to do that also. So it's important to make sure we're getting those done. And I know going forward, we're going to be talking more about dispensations and QuickBooks and things like that. And I know a lot of that will be coming up during the conference in March. But again, I want to appreciate how many lodges made sure they got those, and I do appreciate that. If you're not open on New Year's Eve, and if you have the facilities, if you're not open to the public, you're just losing a chance to make a ton of money on New Year's Eve. That's one of those, everybody calls it amateur night, but that's because a ton of people go out. Not everybody, and I always hear an old officer say, well, we're not going out. People don't go out, but it's one of the biggest going out nights of the year, so that argument falls short on that. Something else I want to point out too also is I have a newsletter here from another organization, but I know lots of Moose Lodges do it. It's important that we're getting newsletters out and getting them out in a timely manner because that's one of our best ways to communicate with our members. It's not the only way to communicate. Hopefully they're using multiple ways because the newsletter is great. Most members open their newsletter up. Maybe some don't. But not everybody comes into the social quarters and sees a calendar. Not every member has Facebook, so they're not seeing Facebook. All those are good programs, but we should be doing multiple things, not just relying on one. And I know lots of lodges talk about newsletters being expensive, especially for larger lodges. Again, remember that should kind of be that cost should be kind of being baked into their Moose membership to help cover that. I mean, we have the association per capita that we have to pay. We have to pay for newsletters, and if people want to complain about that, it's an average of a couple dollars per person to get the paper printed, get the newsletter done, and get it mailed out. But when they complain about their prices, like, well, that's how we let you know what's going on in the lodge, so we really need to be doing that. But and I know some Moose Lodges do this. Here's a newsletter from another organization that I get, and I'm just showing it because it has advertisements on the back. And of course, these here that are on this page pay a little bit more because they're in the middle, so they're seen even when they're being mailed. But as you can see, they have sponsors, several sponsors, and I can't really tell you what to charge. It's different for everybody. Some people they pay $25, and this particular organization does it once every other month. They don't do it monthly. And I think like I said, I think they charge a little bit more for the people that are here in the middle because when this goes through the mail, more people are seeing this. Great way to cover those costs. Now, what I really want to talk about right now is about our bartenders. And I know I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but being out over the holidays and going into a lot of lodges and just sitting down in social quarters and listening and seeing things, we've got to do a better job at training our bartenders across the board. We cannot just be hiring somebody, shoving them behind the bar, and hoping they catch on. Even if they have bartender's experience, the social quarters is set up, our bar is set up different from the next bar, so they have to get used to where those things are at. But those people, even if they have a ton of bartender's experience, if they don't know about the Moose, they're doing a disservice to the lodge and the organization as a whole. They need to know how to fill out an application, make sure there's a sponsor on there, make sure everything's filled out. And I'm going to be saying this more often. We need to make sure that emails are on those because that's one great way for the lodge to contact their members also. I have also used it for retention efforts, and lodges should be using that for retention efforts also. But the bartender should know how to fill out those applications. I was in a lodge where a bartender had no idea, none, what Moose Heart or Moose Haven was. If a bartender can't explain to the membership or prospective new member what the Moose is and where our money goes and what we help with in the local community and what Moose Heart and Moose Haven is, we're losing out on a great chance to hook a potential new member, because then they realize, oh, this place isn't just a bar. When I'm losing money on tip boards, or I'm gambling a little bit, or, buying that drink and now I'm complaining because it went up a quarter. All the good causes that the lodge does locally and Moose Heart and Moose Haven are important for that. We have to make a big distinction between what our social quarters is and the Moose is from the bar down the street. We are not just a bar, and we need to make sure we're harping on that a little bit more. I saw a lot of bartenders not carding people. Even lodges that had door readers were letting people in, buzzing them in. And in one particular lodge that I was in, the person was a Moose member, but not of that lodge. Hearing that individual talk to the bartender, I knew the bartender did not know them. So they buzzed somebody into the social quarters, let them sit down and serve them, not knowing them at all, to card to see if they were a member. If that was an IRS agent or an excise officer, that lodge would have been in trouble. We've got to make sure they're knowing that rule. Just because you have a door reader on the card does not mean people don't slip in because a member opens the door and someone else walks in with them. If they don't know them, and they need to definitely be carding them, which they should be carding on a regular basis anyways. If they have to buzz somebody in, they know that either that member doesn't have a card and they need to find out why. Are they expired? Have they lost their card? Or they're not a Moose member and they shouldn't be serving them. I wrote one note down here and I can't read what that says. I know what it is. I went into another lodge, and actually this happened in more than one lodge during this trip. The bartender was serving beers to members in bottles and cans and not opening them. Let me tell you now, that's actually against excise rule in the state of Indiana. Our lodges do not have a package liquor license, which means liquor to go, and that's what they considered anything being sealed up and closed when it's served from a person. So you have to open beers up and containers up when you're serving them. That is the law. That can also get you in trouble. I don't know whether they think it was I don't know whether those bartenders were just being lazy and not opening them, or they thought it was, being polite and letting them take it back to their table then open them. But they can't do that, because if they leave with that beer closed, the lodge can get in trouble. If they leave and it's open, the person can get in trouble for having an open container, but the lodge wouldn't necessarily be in trouble because they left with an open container. They should be monitoring that. But if they know that that beer was closed, that they sold them packaged to go, is what excise or the police who might pull them over might think. Yes, there was a time during the early shutdown of COVID when lodges were closed that the state did allow people to sell packaged to try to get rid of some of their stock they had in the building. But that rule has long since expired. Flat out pouring double drinks into a glass. If your numbers aren't coming up right and you don't know why you're not making money on liquor, the first thing we always say is the price is probably an issue. But I saw in more than one lodge where they were over pouring, but one where it was flat out doubles. Now I know in this particular lodge they were using a 1.5 ounce pour, which is the standard we try to get people to hit. But there's no doubt that I watched, and this particular bartender was pouring doubles. So they were getting 3 ounces, so they were getting twice as much as they should, and that's coming out of the lodge pocket. They may have been doing it for a tip, and that's just not right. Again, my biggest argument is when they over pour with liquor, the person getting the beer didn't get a beer and a half that price. So why should the person getting liquor be getting, a drink and a half for that cheap price? Also, something that we're going to be hitting on a lot more is our bartenders need to be more friendly. I'm not saying there's some rude ones out there, but there are a few. But when there are members in the lodge and the social quarters, the bartender should be doing something. I am tired of seeing bar stools behind the bar. And I have talked with administrators about it before. Going forward, they're going to get one friendly reminder, and then I'll be removing the chair and we'll be having discussions. Especially if that bartender is a paid bartender. On their shift, there shouldn't be any time to sit down. If they're not waiting on members, which they should be pushing pull tabs and games, having discussions, because that's what a bartender does. They talk to the members sitting at the bar. They need to be staying active. You need to give them a clean list, because if there's the bar behind the bar is dirty, there's no excuse for that, because there's a bartender on duty, and when they're not busy, they should be wiping down bottles, wiping out wells. I went into a lodge and this just irritated the crap out of me, where they're washing their glasses in the sink. That part was clean, but where they're drying them out was dirty, had mold. That hadn't been cleaned probably in a couple of months. It was quite disgusting. They should be doing those kind of things when they're not busy. The chairs behind the bar give the wrong signal. It's an optic that the bartender is being lazy, which if they're sitting in a chair, they probably are. Now, I'm not saying on a long shift they couldn't sit down, but they could sit down at the last stool at the bar on the bar side if they're not busy. I still don't encourage them sitting down for long periods of times, but if they've been up for a long time and they've waited on a bunch of people and there's a lull, that's perfectly fine. I mean, and I know bartenders have to go to the restroom and all those other things, but immediately getting up to wait on somebody and give them a drink and then just walk over to the cash register where there's a bar stool and sit down just looks bad. That has to stop. And in a lot of lodges, we wonder why we aren't busy. 9 times out of 10, the bartender can kill you just as easily as they can make you a lot of money. So we need to make sure we're watching that. Again, we just need to work on training. We cannot hire somebody who is not trained and just put them behind the bar. I know this has been a little while ago, but I was in a social quarters and the new bartender was obviously never been trained as a bartender anywhere, couldn't make a screwdriver. The screwdriver is 2 ingredients, 1 liquor and 1 mixer. If they don't know how to make a screwdriver, they are not a bartender. Now, I get the argument from people saying, well, we want to train people the way we want them trained. I have no problem with that. I've been a bartender for as long as I was. There were several times where I had somebody new who didn't have any bartending experience, and they shadowed me for a couple of months. They learned how to make drinks. They learned where things were at. They learned the basics. They learned how to be friendly, all those things. But you can't just stick them behind. We've got to constantly be training. I'm going into too many lodges where I see a bartender shift change and the 2 bartenders make totally different Bloody Marys or a totally different Sex on the Beach. Everybody in that lodge, all the bartenders should be making the drinks the same way. I have no problem with the Bloody Mary, someone asking, do you want it spicy or not spicy? But the basic ingredients should be the same. A Sex on the Beach, a Long Island iced tea should all look the same from the same bartenders in the same lodge. It has to be consistent. Too often now I'm hearing when a shift change and it's whatever the product may be, well, you didn't make it like so-and-so, and they liked it better that way. We need to make sure that they're being trained properly. So during those bartenders meetings, which you should be having at least once a quarter to deal with things that pop up, we need to be discussing consistency on drinks. All right, I said I wasn't going to go too long, and I've already went over 14 minutes. Everybody, we got some work to do in January with our retention, so we need to make sure we're working on that. We're in a hole, and January can sometimes be a slow month after all the holidays. Some lodges do very well, but we need to make sure we're checking on cards and working on retention. We're in a hole come January 3rd. We're in a pretty big hole. Also, if lodges are having trouble with chapters and need to get files, mailing list or membership information on ladies who were expired before or April 30th back in the spring and did not transfer over into the LCL program, please contact me. There are ways to remedy that problem. There are a few chapters saying that that's private information and they don't want to get over. Technically, they're sort of right, but again, we can discuss that separately. Again, I'm past 15 minutes. Everybody have a good week, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.